梁歌制作，欧也妮葛朗台，作者巴尔扎克。这是绝对没有的。货色的种类要看铺子的性质，或者摆着2-3桶盐和鲶鱼，或者是几捆帆布与绳索。楼板的项目上挂着黄铜锁，靠墙放一排桶菇，再不然架上放些布匹。你进门吧。
Production by Eugénie Grandet, author, Balzac. Absolutely none here. The type of goods depends on the nature of the shop. There are either 2 or 3 barrels of salt and anchovies, or a few bundles of canvas and ropes. Brass ropes are hung on the oak wood of the floor, and a row of barrel hoops is placed against the wall, or else there are racks. Put some cloth. Come in.
一个年轻漂亮的姑娘，干干净净的，戴着白围巾，手臂通红，立刻放下编织物，叫唤她的父亲或母亲来招呼你。也许是2个童子，也许是2万法郎的买卖，对你或者冷淡，或者殷勤，或者傲慢。
A young and beautiful girl, clean, wearing a white scarf, with red arms, immediately puts down her knitting and calls her father or mother to greet you. Maybe it is a business of 2 coppers for 20,000 francs, for you are cold, or attentive, or arrogant.
那得看店主的性格了。你可看到一个做9桶木材的商人，2只大拇指绕来绕去的，坐在门口跟邻居谈天。表面上他只有些骑马的酒瓶架或2-3捆薄板，但是安裕地区所有的古桶匠。
That depends on the shop owner's temperament. You can see a businessman who makes barrel wood, twirling his thumbs around, sitting at the door chatting with his neighbors. On the surface, he only has a basic bottle rack or 2 or 3 bundles of thin boards, but all the coopers in Anyu area
都是向他码头上存货充足的工厂购料的。他知道如搞葡萄的收成好，他能卖掉多少铜板，估计的准确最多是1-2块板上下。一天的好太阳为他发财，一场雨水叫他亏本，9桶的市价。
They all purchase materials from his well-stocked factory on the dock. He knew how many barrel staves he could sell if the Regale grape harvest was good. The most accurate estimate was 1 or 2 staves. A good day of sunshine made him rich, but a rainy day made him lose money, the market price of wine barrels.
一个上午可以从11法郎跌到6法郎。这个地方像都兰区域一样，市面是由天气做主的。种葡萄的、有田产的、木材商、古桶匠、旅店主人、船夫都眼巴巴地盼望太阳，晚上睡觉。
The price dropped from 11 francs to 6 francs in one morning. In this place, like the Touraine area, the market is determined by the weather. Grape growers, landowners, lumber merchants, coopers, innkeepers, and boatmen all eagerly look forward to the sun. They sleep at night.
就怕明朝起来听说隔夜结了冰，他们怕风、怕雨、怕旱，一忽儿要下雨水，一忽儿要天时转暖，一忽儿又要满天上云。在天公与尘世的利益之间，争执是没得完的晴雨表，能够轮流的叫人愁。
They are afraid of getting up in the morning and hearing that it has frozen overnight. They are afraid of wind, rain, and drought. Sometimes it will rain, sometimes the weather will get warmer, and sometimes the sky will be filled with clouds. Between God and earthly interests, the dispute is an endless barometer that can make people miserable in turn.
叫人笑，叫人高兴。这条街从前是索莫城的大街，从这一头到那一头，黄金一般的好天气这句话，对每份人家都代表一个收入的数目。而且各个人会对邻居说，是啊，天上落金子下来了。
Teach people to laugh, teach people to be happy. This street used to be the main street of Somos City. From one end to the other, the phrase, good weather like gold, represents an amount of income for every family. And everyone will say to their neighbors, yes, gold is falling from the sky.
因为他们知道一道阳光和一场时雨带来多少利益。在天气美好的节气，到了星期六中午就没法买到一个童子的东西。做生意的人也有一个葡萄园，一方小园地，全要下乡去忙它2天。
Because they know how much benefit a ray of sunshine and a rain can bring. On a nice day, on a Saturday at noon, it would be impossible to buy anything for a copper. A businessman also has a vineyard or a small plot of land, and he has to go to the countryside to work on it for 2 days.
买进卖出赚头，一切都是预先计算好的。生意人仅可以花大半日的功夫打哈哈，说长道短，刺探旁人的私事。某家的主妇买了一只竹鸡，邻居就要问她的丈夫是否煮得恰到好处。
Buying, selling, making a profit, everything is calculated in advance. Businessmen can spend most of their day chatting, gossiping, and prying into other people's private affairs. When a housewife in a certain family buys a bamboo chicken, her neighbor asks her husband if he cooked it just right.
一个年轻的姑娘从窗口探出头来，绝没有办法不让所有的闲人瞧见。因此，大家的良心是露天的，那些无从窥测的、又暗又静的屋子，并藏不了什么秘密。一般人差不多老在露天过活。
A young girl stuck her head out of the window, and there was no way she could avoid being seen by all the idlers. Therefore, everyone's conscience is in the open air, and those dark and quiet rooms that cannot be observed cannot hide any secrets. Most people almost always live in the open air.
每对夫妇坐在大门口，在那里吃中饭、吃晚饭，吵架拌嘴。街上的行人没有一个不经过他们的研究，所以从前一个外乡人到内地，免不了到处给人家取笑。许多有趣的故事便是这样来的。
Every couple sat at the gate, eating lunch, dinner, and quarreling there. There is no pedestrian on the street who has not been studied by them. Therefore, in the past, when a foreigner came to the mainland, he would inevitably make fun of others everywhere. This is how many interesting stories come about.
安岳人的爱寻开心也是这样出名的，因为编这一类的市井笑料是他们的拿手。早先本地的乡绅全住在这条街上，街的高头都是古城里的老宅子。
Anuak people are also famous for their love of fun, because making up this kind of market jokes is their specialty. In the past, all the local squires lived on this street, and at the top of the street were old houses in the ancient city.
世道人心都还朴实的时代，以这种古风现在是一天天的消灭了的遗物。我们这个故事中的那所凄凉的屋子就是其中之一。古色古香的街上
This ancient custom is now disappearing day by day, a relic of a time when the world and people were still simple. The desolate house in our story is one of these. Antique Street.
连偶然遇到的小事都足以唤起你的回忆，全部的气息使你不由自主地沉入遐想。拐弯抹角地走过去，你可以看到一处黑黢黢的凹进去的地方，格朗台府上的大门便藏在这凹坑中间。
Even the little things you encounter by chance are enough to evoke your memories, and the whole atmosphere makes you fall into reverie involuntarily. Walking around a corner, you can see a dark recessed place, in the middle of which is hidden the door of Grandet's house.
在内地把一个人的家称作府上是有分量的，不知道格朗台先生的身世，就没法掂出这称呼的分量。格朗台先生在所墨城的名望自有他的前因后果。
In the mainland, there is weight in calling a person's home a residence. Without knowing Mr. Grandet's life experience, it is impossible to weigh the weight of this title. Mr. Grandet's reputation in Saumur City has its own causes and consequences.
那是从没在内地单留过的人不能完全了解的。格朗台先生，有些人还称他做格朗台老头，可是这样称呼他的老人越来越少了。他在1789年上是一个很富裕的古董匠识的字。
This is something that people who have never stayed in the mainland cannot fully understand. Mr. Grandet, some people also call him Old Man Grandet, but fewer and fewer old people call him this way. In 1789, he was a very wealthy cooper and could read.
能写能算。共和政府在所墨地区标卖教会产业的时候，他正好40岁，才娶了一个有钱的木板商的女儿。他拿自己的现款和女人的陪嫁凑成2000斤路易，跑到区公所。
Can write and calculate. When the Republican government auctioned off church properties in the Somo area, he was just 40 years old and had just married the daughter of a wealthy woodboard merchant. He used his own cash and the woman's dowry to make up 2,000 louis and ran to the district office.
标卖监督官是一个强凶霸道的共和党人。格朗台把丈人给的400路易往他那里一送，就3000不值2钱的，即使不能算正当，至少是合法的买到了区里最好的葡萄园，一座老修道院。
The auction supervisor was a fierce and domineering Republican. When Grandet gave him the 400 louis given by his father-in-law, it was worth 3 cents. Even if it could not be considered legitimate, at least he bought the district legally. The best vineyard in the country, an old monastery.
和几块分种田。所墨的市民很少革命气息，在他们眼里，格朗台老头是一个激烈的家伙，前进分子，共和党人，关切新潮流的人物。其实古董匠只关切葡萄园。
And several plots of land for farming. The citizens of Saumur have little revolutionary spirit. In their eyes, Old Man Grandet is a fierce guy, a progressive element, a Republican, and a person who cares about new trends. In fact, the cooper only cares about the vineyard.
上面派他当所墨区的行政委员，于是地方上的政治与商业都受到他温和的影响。在政治方面，他包庇从前的贵族，想尽方法使流亡乡绅的产业不致被公家标卖。商业方面，
The superiors appointed him as the administrative committee member of Somo district, so local politics and business were under his gentle influence. In terms of politics, he protected the former nobles and tried every means to prevent the properties of the exiled squires from being auctioned off by the public. In terms of business, he protected the former nobles.
他向革命军队承包了1-2千桶白酒，代价是把某个女修道院上好的草原，本来留作最后一批标卖的产业弄到了手。拿破仑当执政的时代，好家伙，格朗台做了区长。
He contracted 1 or 2,000 barrels of liquor from the Revolutionary Army in exchange for the good grassland of a certain nunnery, which was originally reserved for the last batch of properties to be sold. When Napoleon was in power, the good guy Grandet became the district governor.
把地方上的公事应付得很好，可是他葡萄的收获更好。拿破仑称帝的时候，他变了光杆的格朗台先生。 拿破仑不喜欢共和党人，另外派了一个乡绅兼大地主。
He handled local affairs very well, but his grape harvest was even better. When Napoleon became emperor, he became the Bear Monsieur Grandet. Napoleon didn't like the Republicans, so he sent another country squire and big landowner.
一个后来晋封为男爵的人来代替葛朗台，因为他有红帽子嫌疑。葛朗台丢掉区长的荣衔，毫不惋惜。在他任内，为了本城的利益，已经造好几条出色的公路直达他的产业。
A man who was later promoted to baron came to replace Grandet because he was suspected of being a red hat. Grandet lost the honorary title of district mayor and had no regrets. During his tenure, several excellent highways were built for the benefit of the city leading directly to his property.
他的房产与地产登记的时候占了不少便宜，只完很轻的税。自从他各处的庄园登记之后，靠他不断的经营。
When registering his property and real estate, he took advantage of it and only paid a very light tax. Since the registration of his various manors, he has relied on his continuous management.
他的葡萄园变成地方上的镇儿间，这个专门的形容词是说这种园里的葡萄能够酿成极品的好酒。总而言之，他简直有资格得荣誉团的勋章。免职的事发生在1806年。
His vineyard became a local Jeanergian. This special adjective means that the grapes in this garden can produce the best wine. All in all, he was worthy of the Legion of Honor. The dismissal took place in 1806.
那时葛朗台57岁，他的女人36，他们的独养女儿才10岁。大概是老天看见他丢了官，想安慰安慰他吧。这一年上，葛朗台接连得了3笔遗产。
At that time, Grandet was 57 years old, his wife was 36, and their only daughter was only 10 years old. Perhaps God saw him losing his official position and wanted to comfort him. This year, Grandet received 3 inheritances in succession.
先是他丈母特拉，古蒂尼埃太太的，接着是太太的外公特拉，培德里埃先生的，最后是葛朗台自己的外婆香蒂埃太太的。这些遗产数目之大，没有一个人知道。
First it belonged to his mother-in-law, Madame de la Goudinière, then to her maternal grandfather, M. de la Pedrière, and finally to Grandet's own grandmother, Madame Chantier. These inheritances were so large that no one knows.
3个老人爱钱如命，一生一世都在积蓄金钱，以便私下里抹撒把玩。特拉，培德里埃老先生把放债叫做挥霍，觉得对黄金看上基眼比放高利贷还实惠，所以他们积蓄的多少。
The 3 old men loved money as much as their lives. They spent their whole lives accumulating money so that they could play with it in private. Mr. de la Pedrière called moneylending a squandering, and he felt that it was more economical to pay a little attention to gold than to usury. So how much they have saved?
所莫人只能以看得见的收入估计。于是葛朗台先生得了新的贵族头衔，那是尽管我们爱讲平等也消灭不了的。他成为一州里纳税最多的人物。他的葡萄园有100阿尔邦。
The Somo people can only estimate based on their visible income. So Mr. Grandet got a new title of nobility, which cannot be eliminated even if we love to talk about equality, and he became the most tax-paying person in a state. There are 100 arbons in his vineyard.
收成好的年份可以出产700-800桶酒。他还有13处分种田，一座老修道院，修院的窗子、门洞、彩色玻璃一起给他从外面堵死了，既可不付捐税，又可保存那些东西。
In a good year, 700 or 800 barrels of wine can be produced. He also has 13 areas for farming. He has an old monastery, and the windows, door openings, and stained glass of the monastery have all been blocked up from the outside. Save those things.
此外还有127阿尔邦的草原，上面的3000株白杨是1793年种下的。他住的屋子也是自己的产业，这是他看得见的家私。至于他现今的数目，只有2个人知道一个大概。
There are also 127 Alban grasslands, with 3,000 poplars planted in 1793. The house he lives in is also his property. This is the furniture he can see. As for the amount of his cash, only 2 people know an estimate.
一个是公证人克罗绪替葛朗台放债的，另外一个是台格拉桑，索莫城中最有钱的银行家。葛朗台认为合适的时候，跟他暗中合作一下，分些好处。在内地要得人信任，要挣家业。
One is the notary Crouch, who lends money to Grandet, and the other is Terra Grayson, the richest banker in Somos City. When Grandet thinks it is appropriate, he will secretly cooperate with him and share some benefits. In the mainland, you have to gain people's trust and earn a family fortune.
行事非机密不可。老克罗绪与台格拉桑虽然机密透顶，仍免不了当众对葛朗台毕恭毕敬，使旁观的人看出前任区长的资历何等雄厚。索莫城里各个人相信葛朗台家里有一个司库。
Everything must be done confidentially. Although old Crouch and de Grayson were extremely secretive, they could not help but respect Grandet in public, which made the onlookers see how powerful the former district mayor was. Everyone in Saumur believed in Grandet. There is a private treasury at home.
一个堆满金路易的密窟，说他半夜里瞧着累累的黄金，快乐的无可形容。一般吝啬鬼认为这是千真万确的事，因为看见那好家伙连眼睛都是黄澄澄的，染上了金子的光彩。
A secret cave filled with gold and Lewis. He said that he looked at the piles of gold in the middle of the night and was indescribably happy. Most misers think this is absolutely true, because even the eyes of the good guy are yellow and dyed with the luster of gold.
一个靠资金赚惯大利钱的人，像色鬼、赌徒或帮闲的清客一样，扶风自有那种说不出的神气，一派躲躲闪闪的、缠牢的神秘模样，绝技瞒不过他的同道。凡是对什么东西着了迷的人，
A person who is accustomed to making huge profits from capital, like a pervert, a gambler, or a gangster, has an indescribable air about him, a evasive, greedy, and mysterious look that is determined to be hidden. His colleagues. Anyone who is obsessed with something.
这些暗号无一帮口里的切口。葛朗台先生从来不欠人家什么，又是老古桶匠，又是种葡萄的老手，什么时候需要为自己的收成准备1000只桶，什么时候只要500只桶。
These secret codes are like incisions in Gang's mouth. Grandet never owed anything to anyone. He was an old cooper and an experienced grape grower. When he needed 1,000 barrels for his harvest, he only needed 500 barrels.
他预算得像天文学家一样准确，投机事业从没失败过一次。9桶的市价比酒还贵的时候，他老是有9桶出卖，他能够把酒藏起来，等每桶涨到200法郎才抛出去。
He budgeted as accurately as an astronomer. He never failed in his speculations. He always had barrels to sell when the market price of wine barrels was more expensive than wine. He could hide the wine and wait until the price of a barrel rose to 200 the francs were thrown out.
一般小地主却早已在100法郎的时候脱手了。这样一个人物当然博得大家的敬重。那有名的1811年的收成，他乖乖地囤在家里，一点一滴地慢慢卖出去，挣了24万多法郎。
Generally speaking, small landowners have already sold their hands at 100 francs. Such a figure certainly wins everyone's respect. He kept the famous harvest of 1811 at home and sold it bit by bit, earning more than 240,000 francs.
讲起理财的本领，葛朗台先生是只老虎，是条巨麟。他会躺在那里，蹲在那里，把俘虏打量个半天，再扑上去，张开血盆大口的钱袋，倒进大堆的金银，然后安安宁宁地去睡觉。
When it comes to financial management skills, Grandet is like a tiger with giant scales. He will lie there, squat there, look at the prisoner for a long time, then pounce on him, open his money bag with a bloody mouth, and pour it into the big bag. Pile up gold and silver, and then go to sleep peacefully.
好像一条蛇吃饱了东西，不动声色，冷静非凡，什么事情都按部就班的。他走过的时候，没有一个人看见了不觉得又钦佩又敬重又害怕。所莫城中
Like a snake that has eaten its fill, it remains calm, and everything is done step by step. When he passed by, no one saw him but felt admiration, respect, and fear. In Somo City.
不是个个人都给他钢铁般的利爪，干净利落地抓过一下的吗？某人为了买田，从克罗绪那里弄到一笔借款，利率要1分1。某人拿期票向台格拉桑贴现，给先扣了一大笔利息。市场上
Didn't everyone get a clean scratch with his steely claws? In order to buy a field, someone got a loan from Crouch, and the interest rate was 1 cent. Someone discounted the promissory note to Tai Grassan, and deducted a large amount of interest in advance. On the market.
或是夜晚的闲谈中间，不提到葛朗台先生大名的日子很少。有些人认为，这个种葡萄老头的财富简直是地方上的异宝，值得夸耀。不少做买卖的、开旅店的，得意洋洋地对外客说：“嘿，先生。”
There were very few days when Grandet's name was not mentioned during evening chats. Some people think that the wealth of this old grape grower is simply a local treasure and worth boasting about. Many businessmen and hotel owners proudly said to foreigners, "Hey, sir."
上百万的咱们有2、3家，可是葛朗台先生啊，连他自己也不知道究竟有多少家私。1816年的时候，索莫城里顶会计算的人估计那好家伙的地产大概只到400万。
We have 2 or 3 households among millions of people. But Mr. Grandet, even he doesn't know how many pieces of furniture he has. In 1816, the best calculator in Somo City estimated that the good guy's real estate was worth about 4 million.
但在1793到1817中间，平均每年的收入该有10万法郎，由此推算，他所有的现金大约和不动产的价值差不多。因此，打完了一场牌，或是谈了一会葡萄的情形。
But between 1793 and 1817, his average annual income was 100,000 francs. From this, it can be deduced that all his cash was about the same as the value of real estate. So, after a game of cards, or talking about the grapes for a while.
提到葛朗台的时候，一般自作聪明的人就说：“葛朗台老头吗？总该有500-600万吧。” 要是克罗绪或台格拉桑听到了，就会说：“你好厉害，我倒从来不知道它的总数呢。”
When Grandet is mentioned, smart people usually say, "Old man Grandet? There must be 5 or 6 million." If Crouch or Desgracian heard this, they would say, "You are so awesome, but I never knew his total number."
遇到什么巴黎客人提到洛奇尔特或拉斐德那般大银行家，索莫人就要问他们是不是跟格朗台先生一样有钱。如果巴黎人付之一笑，回答说是的，他们便把脑袋一侧，互相瞪着眼。
Whenever any Parisian visitor mentioned a banker like Rochard or Lafayette, the Summers would ask if they were as rich as M. Grandet. If the Parisians smiled and said yes, they turned their heads to one side and stared at each other.
满脸不相信的神气，偌大一笔财产把这个富翁的行为都镀了金。假使他的生活起居本来有什么可笑，给人家当画饼的地方，那些画饼也早已消灭得无形无踪了。
A look of disbelief on his face. Such a huge fortune gilded the rich man's behavior. If there was anything ridiculous about his daily life, and he could be used as a talking point for others, those talking points have long been eliminated without a trace.
格朗台的一举一动都像是钦定的，到处行得通。他的说话、衣着、姿势、瞪眼睛都是地方上的金科玉律，大家把它仔细研究，像自然科学家要把动物的本能研究出它的作用似的。
Every move of Grandet seemed to be decreed by the emperor, and it was applicable everywhere. His words, clothes, posture, and eyes were all the golden rules of the place. Everyone studied him carefully, just like a natural scientist studying the instincts of animals. It seems to have its effect.
中发现他最琐屑的动作也有深邃而不可言传的智慧。比如，人家说今年冬天一定很冷，格朗台老头已经戴起皮手套了，咱们该收割葡萄了吧？或者说，格朗台老头买了许多铜板。
Finally, I discovered that his most trivial actions also contained profound and indescribable wisdom. For example, people said, "It must be very cold this winter. Old man Grandet has already put on his leather gloves. It's time for us to harvest the grapes." Or, "Old man Grandet bought a lot of barrel staves."
今年的酒一定不少的。格朗台先生从来不买肉，不买面包。每个星期，那些个户给他送来一份足够的食物，阉鸡、母鸡、鸡子、牛油、麦子都是抵租的。他有一所磨坊租给人家。
There will definitely be a lot of wine this year. Mr. Grandet never buys meat or bread. Every week, those households send him enough food, capons, hens, chickens, butter, and wheat, which are all paid for. Rented. He had a mill that he rented to others.
磨坊私务除了缴付租金以外，还得亲自来拿麦子去磨，再把面粉跟麸皮送回来。他的独一无二的老妈子叫做长脚拿农的，虽然上了年纪，还是每星期六替他做面包。房客之中有种菜的。
In addition to paying the rent, the miller had to come and grind the wheat himself, and then send back the flour and bran. His unique old mother, named Nanan, still makes bread for him every Saturday despite her age. Some of the tenants grow vegetables.
格朗台便派他们供应菜蔬，至于水果，收获之多，可以大部分出售。烧火炉用的木材是把田地四周的梨园或烂了一半的老树砍下来，由佃户锯成一段一段的，用小车装进城。
Grandet sent them to supply vegetables. As for the fruit, the harvest is so large that most of it can be sold. The wood used for burning stoves was cut from the fences around the fields or half-rotted old trees, sawn into sections by the tenants, and loaded into the city on small carts.
他们还有心巴结，替他送进柴房，讨得几声谢。他的开支，据人家知道的，只有教堂里座椅的租费、圣餐费、太太和女儿的衣着、家里的灯烛、拿农的工钱、锅子的度息、国家的赋税、庄园的修理。
They still wanted to be fawning and sent him to the woodshed for a few thanks. His expenses, so far as is known, consisted only in the rental of church pews, communion fees, clothing for his wife and daughter, lights at home, Nanan's wages, tinning of pots, state taxes, and repairs to the estate.
和种炫的费用，他新近买了620邦的一座树林，托一个近邻照顾，答应给一些津贴。自从他治了这个产业之后，他才吃野味。这家伙动作非常统单，说话不多。
And the cost of planting lasts. He had recently bought a forest for 600 arbuns and entrusted a neighbor to take care of it, promising to give him some subsidies. He has only eaten wild game since he bought this property. This guy's movements are very monotonous and he doesn't talk much.
发表意见总是用柔和的声音、简短的句子搬弄一些老生常谈。从他出头露面的大革命时代起，逢到要长篇大论说一番，或者跟人家讨论什么，他便马上结结巴巴的，弄得对方头昏脑胀。
Always use a soft voice, short sentences, and some commonplaces when expressing opinions. From the time of the revolution when he first appeared on the scene, whenever he wanted to speak at length or discuss something with others, he would immediately stutter and make the other party feel dizzy.
这种口齿不清、理路不明、前言不对后语以及废话连篇，把他的思想弄糊涂了的情形，人家当作是他缺少教育，其实完全是假装的。等会故事中有些情节就足以解释明白。
This kind of inarticulate speech, unclear reasoning, incorrect preface and follow-up words, and endless nonsense confuses his thinking.